Hey, my fellow veterans out there, how you doing this evening? Well, we had technical difficulties last week with our guest, so I arranged it to where they could come on and promote their organization again today, and they are a no-show. So I'll show their slide here real quick. Oh, wait a minute. Things might be changing here. Ah, there he is. Okay, 1 second.
Hey,
Hi,
Tim.
Mike. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry I got goofed up again with the time zone change.
Not a problem. All right. Let me go ahead and get the program started here, and because we're live right now.
All right.
So let me go ahead and start here and get things going. All right, folks. Hey, our guest is here tonight, Mr. Mike Foss from Warrior Bonfire Program. So let's go ahead and get this show started, shall we? All right. Hey, folks. Meet Mike Foss from Warrior Bonfire Program. And how you doing, sir?
I am fantastic.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, for all you new viewers out there, my name's Tim Hauser. People call me the Golf War Advocate. Uh, in time, y'all know why. And hey, what we like to do on this show is promote everything veterans, everything from nonprofits to legislation, both state and federal, to new VA benefits available to you, stuff like that. So, how you doing, Mike? And
I'm fantastic.
all right, and so we can get started here. Can you tell us a little bit about uh, the Warrior Bonfire Program and how it got started?
Sure. And really, to tell you about the Warrior Bonfire, I have to tell you how we got started. Um, in 2012, a guy named Dan Fordyce, our founder, guy I started my Army career with back in 1983, he had this wild idea. He wanted to take some wounded veterans on a deer hunt. Him and his brother have a piece of property outside of Vicksburg, Mississippi, and so Dan gets this idea, and he starts calling Walter Reed and BAMC, Balboa, all these big military hospitals, and they're all telling him, "Who are you? Go away! Don't call us back." And so Dan kind of figured out, well, I guess if I'm going to do something like this, I need to start a nonprofit. And he, at the same time, or about the same time, met a medically retired Army Sergeant First Class, a guy named Greg Williams, who had been blown up in an RPG attack. He actually died on the table, but they thankfully were able to save his life. Um, and GCC is what we call Greg. He told Dan that he could spend all day with a certified counselor and not find the therapeutic value that he could with just hanging around with guys, 5 or 6 guys around a campfire. He also told Dan, we don't need to call Walter Reed. There's plenty of guys in our own backyard, meaning uh, Mississippi and Louisiana. And he helped Dan find 5 other guys. So they took him on their deer hunt. And the first night, everybody has gone to sleep. And Dan and his brother Hunter are talking. And you're like, holy crap, there's a lot more going on here than just deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm very thirsty.
No problem.
And these guys were opening up with each other, helping each other, advising each other. And Dan had kind of forgotten that there's just that bond amongst veterans.
Right.
And so that's what happened. And so what that turned into is the Warrior Bonfire Program.
Oh,
And
man,
what we
that's
do is we take 6 Purple Heart recipients, combat wounded guys, on what we call bonfire adventures around the country. The idea is to still show them a good time, get them in the great outdoors, because there's healing in the great outdoors.
Mhm.
And we go, we take groups of 6, and the activities can be anywhere from hunting, fishing, skiing, snowmobiling, snorkeling, scuba diving, golf, caving, you name it, we've done it. But what really happens is 3 special things that we do. Night 1, when everybody is settled in, had dinner, everybody tells their story. And it can get hard for some guys. I've actually had some guys that it takes them a day or 2 to tell their story. And I've probably been on 50 of these things, and I don't think I've ever heard one that suicide wasn't mentioned, either contemplated or attempted and thank God failed. And then the other thing we do is a coping session, and it's really just the guys talking about how they cope with things. And that could be post-traumatic stress, TBIs. It could be, walking around without a leg. It can be things dealing with family, spouse, kids, spiritual, whatever it is. And they talk about it. And sometimes these sessions last half an hour. Sometimes they last 3. It's just totally up to the guys. And then the last thing we do is that we have a bonfire. Warrior Bonfire, you got to have a bonfire. Now,
Right.
sometimes I live in Colorado, and sometimes in the summer you can't go up into the mountains in August and have a campfire. So I'll tell you what we do in place of that. But what we do is we retire a U.S. flag. And we do it a little different. First of all, we use an old Boy Scout ceremony. And then instead of retiring the flag whole, we cut it into stripes. And everybody gets a red stripe, a white stripe, and a blue stripe. And we retire each one of those in honor of a fallen comrade. Now, when we first started, we thought it was going to be just another way of saying goodbye. We kind of figured out there was going to be some survivor's guilt, so these guys got to retire a flag in honor of someone that they got to keep going for. But what we didn't come to think of ahead of time, so many of these guys that got blown up in IEDs or blown up by RPGs or whatever, they got medevaced out. Well, they lost a buddy and they never had an opportunity to say goodbye, and were given up that opportunity. And you can imagine that that's a very emotional, somber event, and it is. But depending on the group, 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, they're all jaw-jacking again. And so what I really think we're doing is 3 things. We are building greater support communities. So these guys have someone to reach out to as when they're, gosh darn it, when their post-traumatic stress kicks in. Okay. We're also fostering healing. And probably the most important is transforming and saving lives. Now, I'm going to give you 3 examples. None have to do with the Warrior Bonfire other than relations. But I think they tell you what the deal is with post-traumatic stress. The first one is a woman that goes through labor. That's a very traumatic event. Okay.
Yes.
No, it's a happy traumatic event, but it's a traumatic event. And a woman can only talk to another woman that has gone through childbirth. Okay. I was in the room 3 times. I don't truly get it. Right.
Right.
I saw a lot of stuff that my wife went through, but I don't truly get it. And then the next one I want to tell you about my son. in December 13th of 2013, my son was a senior in high school, 18 years old, and there was a shooting at his school. Kyle was 2 classrooms away. He heard the gunfire go, heard the Molotov cocktails go off, knew the girl that was murdered, knew the shooter that took his own life, and knew the teacher that was really the ultimate target of the thing. And to this day, what is this? Almost 10 years later, he's never talked to me, my wife, his big brother, his big sister about his feelings about that day. Who did he talk to? Classmates, teachers, coaches, people that were in the building. And the last story I'll tell you is a Purple Heart recipient. Our founder, Dan, was interviewing a guy named Philip Cassio for the World War II Museum. And Philip at the time was 97 years old. This was 2016. So 71 years after World War II. Philip had been in a B-17 bomber going over the English Channel. They got shot down. They were able to land in the water and get out in the lifeboats. They were captured by the Nazis, and he spent 811 days in a German POW camp. And he told Dan that throughout his life, he would get nightmares, what you and I call post-traumatic stress today.
Right.
And what he would do was call up one of his buddies that had been in the POW camp with him, and the nightmares would go away. Then he told Dan, now all those guys are gone. I have no one to talk to. The nightmares come almost every day. So that's where I truly think what we're really doing is giving these guys more and more people to contact when their nightmares kick in. And there's a lot of healing, different ways of healing from post-traumatic stress. There's counseling, there's spirituality, there's medicine, all sorts of different things. But one thing I think for everyone is the communicating with someone that's been through a similar event.
Right.
And that's kind of the story of the Warrior Bonfire Program.
I gotta agree with you too, that the communicating, I think that's the biggest part, because you'll admit you're a veteran. We're the most stubborn group there is. We do not like talking about our careers. We do not like talking about ourselves, but we will open up to fellow veterans.
Yep.
And it'll be 23 years this coming Christmas Eve. My brother Dennis, who was a Vietnam and a Gulf War veteran. I'm a Gulf War veteran myself. And he decided to take his own life. And ever since then, I've been trying to, deal with my own demons. And also advocating for other veterans so we can stop the veteran suicide. And programs like yours is what I like to promote the most, because you're actually getting veterans to talk with each other. And that is actually saving lives. So I commend you for that. And now, when your founder and his friend decided to do this, did they automatically knew that they needed to be a nonprofit, or did they try to start it without going that route at first?
Just to put it as bluntly as I can, it was just thought that they were just flying by the seat of their pants. And they all they wanted to do was show some guys a good time. And you can if Dan and his brother Hunter were here today, they would tell you what we've turned into is nothing what their initial thought was. And we've conducted 172 bonfires since that first one in Mississippi in January 2013.
Man, that's a lot of bonfires. Now, when I know you stated that they have to be a Purple Heart recipient. Are there any other requirements to be able to get into the program?
Well, it's a Purple Heart recipient. That's the requirement. You're
Okay.
purple. Now, I will be honest with you. We do take a few combat wounded guys that don't have a Purple Heart, but those guys all come, and I say guys, there's men and women. But those non-Purple Heart combat wounded guys come from a recommendation from someone we know and trust. Because there is, like you say, there's a bond amongst veterans, right?
Yes.
There's a bigger bond amongst combat veterans.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bigger bond amongst combat wounded guys. And then there's a larger bond amongst Purple Hearts. And the reason why we went through Purple Hearts, it's an easy vetting process. You either got it or you don't.
Yeah,
we are not a one and done type of deal.
Okay.
If you need to get on a trip, we'll get you on one.
Now, if a veteran contacts you folks and wants to participate in one of your outings, do they have to? Well, first, let's say they're in Mississippi. Do you try to get a group for Mississippi, or do you try to get them to one of the closest?
Totally the opposite.
Okay.
I live in Colorado. I don't need to take a guy skiing. He can go skiing all he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we got an alligator hunt in Mississippi, which we've only done once, but mm-hmm. That would be good for the guy from Colorado to go see, because he's seeing something different. Now, yes. It doesn't always work out that way. We could be skiing in Colorado, and there's a guy that lives in Colorado Springs that really needs it. We'll put him on the trip. Okay. But we fly guys all over the country. Now that has become, with the price of airline tickets, that's become our largest expense. But mm-hmm. Yeah, we fly guys all over the country. I got a trip coming up in Puerto Rico. I got a guy from Anchorage coming to Puerto Rico.
Oh, he's gonna love Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not, and typically, here's what happens when someone gets on our website and registers. Someone will give that call probably within 48 hours, just to talk to them, tell them how things work and everything. And then you got to go register for a bonfire adventure, because I don't want to just assign you something. Let's say I assign you to go fishing in Missouri and you hate fishing. Well, why take you fishing then? Right. So we try to give it up to the individuals. We try do a variety of things so that they have choices.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, if a family member contacts you, says, "Hey, I think this might be a good program for my veteran," how do you handle a situation like that?
Well, we actually have a number, and remind me after answering this question, I got something else to tell you that I left out.
Okay.
But we actually have a probably about 5 to 7% of those guys that we've got in our database that their spouse filled it out.
Okay.
So if your wife fills it out for you, we're going to give you a call and say, "Hey, it looks like Sally, signed you up for this, and we'd love to have you and talk to you about it and all that kind of stuff."
Oh, that's
but good. But the two things I failed to tell you, I told you our main program,
mm-hmm.
But we also do spouses bonfires. Oh. Everything kind of mirrors what I told you about the bonfire trips, but obviously different types of conversation.
Yes.
A lot of the spouses suffer with not with the actual post-traumatic stress and TBI, but they got to deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
and they need groups to talk to about dealing with it just as much as the guys do, or the Purple Hearts do. So we offer those, and then we also have started doing couples bonfire trips, because let's face it, there's a lot of divorce rate amongst combat wounded guys,
Yes.
and so we're trying to help there as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, you just hit a very important point there that a lot of organizations do forget is the spouses and family members. They go through hell just as much as we did.
Oh yeah, and sometimes more.
Yes.
Because if you got a guy that's really troubled, that dealing with that is a full-time job.
Yes.
And as much, and we know this, that we don't share enough with our spouses.
That's right.
And that's more on men than women.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's more on veterans than civilians. It's more on combat and combat wounded veterans than it is with civilians. And so it's really truly important to have that those spouses to have those, because they might not have PTSD kick in, but if the guy is PTSD kicks in, they need to talk to somebody about it just as much.
I agree, and hopefully more organizations start including spouses in some of their programs, because you're right, they need help just as much as their veteran does.
Yeah.
And as I can only, thinking about it now, I can only imagine what my brother's spouse went, his wife was going through the whole time he was dealing with his PTSD.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you. And I think it actually made me stronger having to go through that, because I was in a bad place myself. But it thinking about what he did kept me from actually doing it myself, because I couldn't see my parents having two veterans sons take their own lives.
Yeah.
So I think it made me stronger. And then I started advocating at that time too. Of course, I got nowhere until recently with the advocating part, but I just wish back then I had thought about what his wife went through, having to deal with him at his issues at that time.
Yeah, but at least you thought about what your parents were going through.
Right.
I mean, because there's nothing, I can't imagine anything worse than losing a child, especially in that way.
Right. And back then, because this was in the middle 80s, no 90s, I mean, because I got out in September 92. He retired almost the exact same day I separated. And so we went back home to where our parents lived. And yeah, I can only imagine, not only I saw what my parents were going through dealing with it, but I forgot about what his wife was going through. So I want to thank you for including spouses in your program. And now, what type of requirements do the spouses have to meet in order to get into your program?
They have to be the spouse of a Purple Heart we've served.
Okay. Very simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Well, like I say, the vetting process, you could make everything really difficult for yourself, for the organization, and for the guys that want to be part of the organization. So if you make it simple, it's simple. It's a Purple Heart. You either got it or you don't. You're the spouse of a Purple Heart that's been on a bonfire. That you either got it or you don't.
And when a veteran is accepted into your program, do they have to pay for travel to get to?
No, everything is at our expense,
including fishing and hunting licenses if required?
Yep, everything. Now, sometimes we get lucky and the guy's already got his fishing license, so we don't have to worry about it. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's all expenses paid.
And I failed to let our audience know too that the chat is open. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get you on the show. All right, and now dealing, I wouldn't say dealing, but knowing that some of these veterans are physically, say, damaged, some maybe in wheelchairs, are you able to accommodate them?
Not on every bonfire, but yes.
Ah,
Okay.
fantastic.
If I got a guy that's wheelchair bound and we're staying in a house that doesn't have a first floor bedroom, we're not going to take him and try and get him down his wheelchair downstairs or
Right.
upstairs. But so we can't do it on every one we do. But we make accommodations by offering up different bonfire opportunities.
Awesome. I had a question. Now it slipped my mind, but so I'll come back to it when it does pop back.
We all got that problem.
Yes, yes. Because like I told the individual that I was communicating with at first with your organization, that most of this is spontaneous. The questions, everything except for the very first one is how did the organization get started? So everything's spontaneous. So yes, even on a live show, I a question does slip my mind, and
Yeah, that's better.
then
That's
it
a
comes
better
back.
way to go. Just having a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I just feel it's more natural when it's just a conversation and it's spontaneous, and I think it helps promote your organization more.
Yeah, it's one
Mm-hmm.
thing if we were actors and we were doing this for a TV show. Yeah,
Right.
then you want to practice it and have it perfect. But yeah, just a
Yep.
conversation.
And since the goal of the show is to get information to veterans
Yeah.
and their families, yeah,
And
spontaneous for me is the best way to go.
there is a couple other things
Mm-hmm.
that I want to inform you and your
Sure.
audience about. Is one, we know and we don't want to be um, able to serve everybody. If I was going to serve everybody, then I'd just be, a $500 million a year budget to the federal government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we know we can't serve everybody. We can't afford it. We don't have the time, staff, funds, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a vast resource list. I was talking to a guy the other day whose son is a veteran, and through all faults of his own, drugs, alcohol, everything, the guy's in jail. And he's asking, what can I do for you? And I really can't do anything for you, but I can point you in a direction. And
Yes.
I found an organization that I thought would help him. They were looking for help with the dad was looking for help with legal fees, and I was able to point him in a direction of a place where he might be able to get some help. Now I don't know if he got that help yet because it was just a few days ago. But so we know we can't be everything for everybody, but we
Right.
certainly want to be able to point people in the right direction. And then the other thing is we've gone to a program called Beyond the Bonfire. And this is a program for Purple Hearts that we've served. They've got to have been on a number of bonfire retreats, and they've got to meet some other criteria. But if they do, we train them, and they go out leading bonfire trips. So not only are they being served by giving back is always a good way to serve, right?
Yes.
And always a good way to heal for yourself is
Hmm.
by giving back. And so we've got that program where they're giving back, but that even makes it a stronger bonfire trip because the leader of the trip is not only a veteran, but it's a veteran that's been through the same crap you've been through.
Uh,
Um,
yes. Hmm.
I was not in combat. I was on active duty. Then I was in the reserve and guard. Then after 9/11, volunteered to go back on active duty with all thoughts that I was going to end up going to Iraq or Afghanistan. And I was selected a few times to go by my command, and then they pulled it back. So after 9/11, my service was all in Fort Carson and Colorado Springs and Fort Bliss and El Paso. Um, so I mean, I'm a veteran, so I'm accepted,
Hmm.
but it's better if it's one of your own.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's uh, something that I failed to research was your program beyond the bonfire, which I think is fantastic because, like you said, that camaraderie amongst veterans it builds with if they start having the same experiences from the past. And
Yep.
uh, now, like me, I'm the only Gulf War veteran that I know. The VFW post that I belong to, it's all Korean and Vietnam guys, and a couple people from Afghanistan. Trying to find Gulf War veterans in the where I live, it's like pulling teeth. So organizations like yours are probably, you know, helping people who are having a hard time locating veterans with the same experiences. It's probably like a dream come true for them.
You know, we have more. Um, I'm thinking just off the top of my head of five uh, Gulf War um, Purple Hearts that we have. There might be a few more.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going to give you a suggestion on your VFW. Um, research VFW Post 1 in Denver.
Okay.
One of the things we find is this generation, especially the Afghan and Iraqi generation, but even going back into the 90s, aren't big joiners.
Right.
So, what VFW Post 1 in Denver has done is they have kind of redone the whole model. Um, you know, we in Denver we have these things called First Friday art walks, and
Yes.
VFW Post 1 is in one of the art districts in Denver, and they have a big art program, and they display it all the time, but they open it up to the public on First Friday, and the art, and they do Toastmasters, teaching people how to talk. They do yoga. They do all sorts of different, more up to date things that this generation, the younger generation of veterans, is more interested in. Now, there's a bar in there, but I'll tell you, the
Hmm.
bar is not an open. You don't go in there and have a drink. The bar is in there for events. You know,
Hmm.
if they have a fundraiser going on or something, then they'll get some beer and wine and serve some alcohol. But it's not, you know, it's not like your regular VFW where everybody goes in and just drinks beer all night. That's not the post. But research that, and that
Okay.
might be something you can, you know, kind of talk to your guys and say, hey, here's this opportunity because they're, you know, I belong there, and it's a growing post.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. Um, now, since all these costs for these veterans are paid for through your organization. Um, how can people donate to you folks?
Well, if you go to our website, warriorbonfireprogram.org, there's a big donate button right on the homepage, or you can just go, Warrior Bonfire Program .org donate. You can also go to our other ways to give page. There's all sorts of different ways to support us. Like I said, airline travel is our biggest expense, and we get a few people here and there donating some miles. That always helps. And so if you just go through the website, there's plenty of ways that there, and we do a lot of take in a lot of volunteers, and just little simple examples of volunteers is, my son does our QuickBooks. We got a lady in Atlanta that enters all donations and creates all the thank you and receipts into our system. We've got people that volunteer to host a meal during a bonfire trip. One of the coolest things we've got is and this happens a few places. But like when we do our ski trip in Colorado, we got a group that takes the guys ice fishing, and you ought to see, some little short Marine from Jackson, Mississippi, catching in 24-inch long lake trout in the middle of winter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got to warn you, my dog is in the backyard howling and is about ready to join us. Now, I can usually get him to stop by just petting him, but we'll see.
Now, I happen to be in my basement, and my dogs are upstairs, and it's a miracle we've gone this long without them howling too. So,
well, this my other dog rarely even barks, but this guy, if you hear a siren, if you hear something. And when we first got him, they said he was a border collie, and then me and my wife were sitting at a brewery, and the guy next to us says, "Hey, do you mind if my kids come pet your dogs? We just had to put ours down." And we're like, "Sure." And he's looking at our dog, what we thought was just a purebred border collie, and he goes, that dog's, we tell him about the howling. That dog's part beagle. Because he's got the same markings, and he's definitely got the howl down.
All right. Want to add this to the bottom of the page here real quick for our audience, so I don't have to keep reminding them that the chat is open. So if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll get you on the show. All right. Now, we got 2 Maltese. So, yeah, I understand every single siren, every tiny little sound that you can't hear, but they can, they go nuts. So I'm surprised they haven't gone nuts at all tonight, especially when Mom came home. So
he always has to howl and be right by me. There's times where I go and run in and find a bathroom in the house and just lock myself in the bathroom until he's done, because it just drives me bananas.
Yes, I know how that is. Now, I want to get back to one thing. I think I heard you mention that some people donate air miles.
Yeah.
Ah, fantastic. You're the second organization out of many that I've interviewed that stated that people donate air miles to them. And I think the other one was a organization called Fisher House. They offer room and board for family members when their veteran or their service member is in the hospital.
I know Fisher House.
Yes.
Great organization.
So I think it's wonderful that people can donate air miles, because all the traveling that I have done, and I know I will be doing, my air miles are going to pile up. So now I know there's another organization that I can donate air miles to. So, So all you out there who are listening on the audio, I'll put the, because not only are people watching us live right now, but this will also air starting tomorrow on Apple, on Amazon, and Spotify,
Cool.
and Google Podcasts. So you're going to get a lot of people not only viewing this, but they'll listen to the audio starting tomorrow as well. So
Fantastic.
you'll get quite a few people probably sending in requests on your website here in the next few days.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and one thing I always like to tell people is, we partner with a lot of other organizations to do things. And one of the things in this, at least in the veteran space of nonprofits, yes, there's the few big guys, but of the smaller, mid to smaller organizations, none of us ever think of competition.
Right.
It's not a competition. I'm just going to name another organization that's close by me. It's not a competition between me and the Honor Bell Foundation, because all we're trying to do is serve veterans. And whether you're serving them or I'm serving them, they're getting served.
Right.
Now, I shouldn't have picked Honor Bell Foundation because they toll a bell at veterans' funerals. So, but you understand what I'm saying. But they're
Yes.
still serving veterans.
Yes.
But it's not a competition. It's just it's a collaboration, and that's one of the coolest things about this space.
Well, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but I advocated for the PACT Act, and I went back and forth to Washington, D.C. with a group called Burn Pits 360 and worked with John Stewart and a gentleman by the name of John Feel. He's the one who got the 9/11 first responders through healthcare. And one of the trips to D.C., the Senate voted down the bill. So we decided to start sleeping on the steps of the Capitol building just to, bring awareness to what was going on. And during that week, a lot of veterans just showed up in support of the bill. They just showed up for no reason, just that, hey, I'm just sitting at home watching you guys on TV. I thought I could come and offer you guys some assistance. There was a gentleman there who, Vietnam veteran, lost one of his legs, lost one of his arms. And he's talking to a gentleman from, and I'm going to call him out, Wounded Warriors Project. Says, hey, look, my prosthesis is broken. The VA can't help me out. I'm not quite sure what was going on with the VA. And the gentleman from the Wounded Warriors Project goes, I'm sorry, sir. We can't help you. And the gentleman says, well, why not? He says, we only offer services to post 9/11 veterans. But here's a membership application. Become a member of Wounded Warriors Project and help the veterans we can help. Not once did he offer any information on where he can go to get help. I thought that was very, very wrong. Another gentleman, he went up to a representative from, and I'm calling another big organization out, Disabled American Veterans, DAV. He says, hey, look, I need some assistance. My PTSD is so bad. I'm having a hard time keeping a job. I'm financially strapped. I might lose my house. I need some help. That representative too says, I'm sorry, we only help veterans that are disabled. We don't consider PTSD a disability. Not once did he, but he offered an application to become a member. I didn't know these guys, have membership requirements. He did not offer information to where that veteran could go to get help.
Well, that's the issue. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it's just like I said, we can't do everything for everybody. Okay. We
Right.
just can't. We don't have the funds, the staff, the wherewithal. But we're going to work tirelessly to find where you can get some help. And and I'm not dissing on the larger organizations because they do good.
Yes. Yes. I'm
And
not. Yeah.
they've done good and they do good.
Right.
Sometimes it's their representative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the things that happens, and it would be the same thing if we owned a big company, if you and I owned a big, $500 million a year company, you lose track of what's important.
Right.
And so that's why, if we just look at companies, that's why if you look at studies, people that work for small companies are always happier than people that work for big national corporations.
Right.
Doesn't mean the national corporations are bad in any way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're employing a lot of people and everything, but you can't touch when you got 500 employees or whatever. It's hard to touch each one of them, and then you got
Right.
3,000 customers. It's hard to touch every one of them. When you're smaller, it's easier to touch.
Yes.
Just like government, can you imagine if that 9/11 bill we were just trying to get through, and I'm going to say New York because that's what state it was in.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a lot easier to get that bill passed just by the state of New York than it is by the United States government.
Right.
Doesn't mean the people in the United States government are bad. It's just a lot more bureaucratic.
Yep.
than
Yeah.
the New
I
York
learned
State.
that. I learned that with the PACT Act too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to start an organization myself, and it's called Veterans Assurance Network. And we're building a network with smaller nonprofits like yours. So if a veteran goes uh, to a smaller nonprofit and says, "Hey, this is what I need help with," and they can't offer it, they know who they can send them to get the help.
Right.
And I think that's one of the main reasons why there's a lot of veterans that are having a hard time is we're already frustrated with uh just an example, like um getting treatment at the VA for certain things, um or finding work. It's here in Ohio they used to have a program where veterans were uh given priority for uh being hired. They kind of put that to the wayside.
Well,
So
and then again, I always look on the positive side of things.
mhm,
I'm the eternal optimist. Um, but our society changes its focus so much.
mhm,
Um, you know, I don't even know what our focus is right now, but it's there was a big long time of focusing on veterans. There was, okay.
mhm,
Um, and I really credit the Vietnam veterans for all the nonprofits out there, whether they're very small or the Wounded Warrior Project and
mhm.
everything in between, because I believe that those Vietnam veterans said no veteran's going to be treated like we were treated, and we
Right.
didn't, and we
Mhm.
didn't. We treated them with respect and did everything. But when our focus goes on to something else, you kind of lose that other focus, right?
Right.
And so it's not a bad thing. It's just a human nature type of thing. So that's why it's for guys like you and I that are focused in the veteran space. We got to keep telling people that these injuries, whether they're physical or mental, are lifelong.
Yep.
You know, I truly believe post-traumatic stress doesn't go away.
I agree with you.
Obviously, I know that guy sitting on the steps of the Capitol without a leg and without out an arm, they don't come back. Now we can do prosthetics, but it's still not his real arm and leg.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's better than his real arm and leg, but
Right.
but it's our job to kind of always kind of bring it up that, hey, veterans, it's like my sister. She is very involved in rescue dogs. And she probably fosters, 4 to 5 dogs at a time, plus her own 2. Oh, here he comes again. But and that's not something that a lot of people think about.
Right.
Okay. But that's a true need, is to take care of these dogs. I mean, a lot of these dogs that she fosters go to Canada, she lives in the South, go to Canada, go to the Midwest, go to New England. Shoot, she sent some to France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, can't there be somebody here that would take this dog? So we all have our different individual focuses, and we all can't give to everything because we don't have the money, right?
Right.
But it's just keeping the message going, whatever that message needs to be.
Yes, I fully agree with you on that. And now, you had mentioned beyond the bonfire. What are the requirements for a veteran to start getting into that program with you?
Well, you have to have gone on. The main thing is you have to have gone on 2 bonfire adventures before you can even be considered. There's an application process, and then we interview everybody. And then if you get selected, you go to training. And that training mirrors a bonfire. We do everything, we mirror a bonfire trip. Even if it's our board of directors annual retreat mirrors a bonfire trip. We do the storytelling, we do the coping session, we do the bonfire, we surround it by a recreational therapy. So that's how you have to be an alumni of at least 2 bonfires to even be considered. And then there's other smaller things that are involved in that, but that's through the application process.
All right.
Now I'll tell you, one of the things we don't have with that bonfire, beyond the bonfire, is almost every one of them, except for the guy in Alaska, lives in the Southeast. And we probably do more trips per year in the West. Well, not more, but equal number in the West that we do in the East. So we got to get some of these guys kind of from the West saying, "Hey, I want to do this."
Yeah. There you go. Well, hopefully this show will help you get that.
And, I hope so too.
Now, we're gonna start wrapping up here soon, but once again, folks, if this is an organization that you think you want to participate in, because one of the things that we mentioned earlier is us veterans, we don't like talking too much with our spouses about our careers or our service time or what happened to us, but we talk to other veterans. And if you notice, there's been a pattern here lately on all these episodes. And but if you want to participate in one of their adventures here, it's warriorbonfireprogram.org. Even if all you want to do is donate, so another brother and sister can get onto one of these. warriorbonfireprogram.org, and all the information's there. Matter of fact, some of the pictures on the website too very interesting. The shows the actual, group around the bonfires and everything. So that very good visual, I thought. And now I remember the question that I forgot earlier.
30 minutes later,
Yes. How do you get them to start talking?
we ask. It's amazing. We do that storytelling, and one guy goes, and usually it's one that's been on a trip before to make it a little easier. And then everybody just goes. Now, I did tell you that every once in a while you got somebody who doesn't open up
Mhm.
that night.
Yeah.
I had a guy, we were at a ranch in South Dakota. Um, and that night he just couldn't. And he said he couldn't. And 2 days later, we're making lunch. And he says, okay, everybody, I'm ready. So we stop making lunch, sit down, and he tells his story.
Oh wow.
Uh, and the most amazing thing with that was this guy's wife was active duty Navy, and he
Mm.
still couldn't open up to her.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually kind of saw that happen too when I came back from the storm. All my troops, uh, whose spouses were in the service too, were in the Air Force at the same time. They couldn't open up to them either. I
I
always
think
wondered why.
well, I think there's a couple things. Um, and one is men have always been told to hold it in and not show your emotion. Now,
Yeah.
my grandfather, the World War II veteran, wouldn't say a thing to anybody, right?
Right.
My dad, he wasn't. He was uh, kind of in the middle between Korea and Vietnam. He was a little bit better at opening up about whatever. Now, I'm not just talking about our military stuff, but open up about whatever, emotion about whatever. I'm better than my dad was. My boys are better than I was. So our society is getting better at that. But we
Hmm.
still kind of have in our mind that men, you hold it in, you don't show emotion, you got to be strong, and and we are getting better as a society with that, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, I agree. And matter of fact, that reminds me of a story. When I was in high school, our principal, um, nobody knew he was uh, part of the raid on Normandy until 3 years ago. He was on 60 Minutes. Nobody in the town knew for all this time that the
Right?
man was in the army and he was a paratrooper, and that he actually rescued 6 of his buddies, and he was a Medal of Honor recipient. Nobody knew. His wife never even mentioned it to us. She said on 60 Minutes that she didn't know anything about what happened. All she knew is he was in the army. She didn't know he was part of Normandy. The man was, short. He was like barely 5 foot tall, and he carried out 6 of his buddies to safety. So there you go, folks.
Yep.
Us veterans, we just don't like to talk. And it's programs like Warrior Bonfire that does help us talk. The more talking we do, the more healing we'll do. And this is the part of the show where I always bring this slide up. If you're unable to get in, not able to get into a program, it's not what I wanted to say. If maybe you're waiting to go on to an adventure with an organization, but it's too difficult for you at that time, 988, then press 1. The VA, trust me, folks, the VA has fixed this entire system. The phone number is easy, 988, then press 1. You are guaranteed to get a live licensed counselor on the line when you do call. No more messages, no more voicemails, no more we need to call you back. You will get a licensed counselor on the line when you call. On top of that, as of January 17th of this year, if you feel like you're going to harm yourself or harm somebody else, you can go to any medical facility in this country. Regardless if you're in the VA system or not, the VA will pick up the tab for your medical care. All right. So they are making progress. So please utilize those. And I also want to thank the folks at Veterans Insurance Network. They're the ones who present this show. So I've got to give them a tiny little shout out. If you don't know an organization that can help you, and you can contact Veterans Insurance Network, and they know who will be able to help you. Be it Warrior Bonfire Program, or if it's some other organization, they will know who can help you. So, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and hopefully we did your organization proud. And if you, after we go off the air, if you can stay on for a few minutes, I'd appreciate that. And folks, we're going to have another awesome organization on. It's going to be their second time on. They were on when the show was first called the Gulf War Advocate, but we were only getting Gulf War veterans watching the show when we called it that, Mike. So that's why we switched it to Veterans Central, and now we're getting a wider range of veterans watching and their families. So next week we're going to have Veterans in Pain. We're going to have Michaela back on, and she's going to update us on some of the new programs that they offer. And hope to see you all next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. All right, we'll see you then, folks.
Thank you all.